Hello folks, and welcome to a new video. This is the weekend hi-fi related video, and of course we're talking about a piece of hi-fi. Well, two pieces actually, a pair of speakers, stand mounted speakers from Italy. These speakers cost, in euro terms, that's the only price I have at the moment, €2,250. Now this is a tale of two sound envelopes from a single set of speakers from the Orchestra. A strange name, I suppose you would say, and I would agree with you. Now, before we get to the nitty-gritty techie chatter, and we'll go to the closer look section in a second, let's talk aesthetics and designation, shall we? After all, the full name of these speakers are the Orchestra Celestial Deep Breath Evo speakers. Now, the name of these speakers, especially when twinned with the name of the company, sounds exactly like a New Age CD issued around 1996, I would say. You know the type. They used to be sold in those tall card-mounted racks. They were dominated by Roger Eno, and they sat cheek by jowl with boxes of tarot cards, incense, and tie-dye t-shirts. Which is odd, because to look at these celestial speakers themselves in isolation, they actually appear to be hulking great bruisers, the type of speakers owned by bricklayers and hod carriers, sporting even larger mugs for their builder's tea and unsightly cracks just above the belts of their grubby jeans. Which just goes to show you can't judge a book by its cover. To confuse things even further, these speakers are from Italy. A place of style, a place of flair and even panache, and certainly not unsightly jeans cracks. So I will let you ponder and muse upon that conundrum as we enter the twilight zone. No, hang on, as we take a closer look. And welcome to the closer look section for the Orchestra Celestial Deep Breath Evo speakers. What a mouthful that is, and what a pair of speakers these are. If you take a look, they certainly occupy some space, don't they? What sort of space? Well, these speakers each offer a generous 247mm by 351 by 325mm, or in old money, that's 9.5 by 14 by around 13 inches. Now, these Celestials weigh in at a healthy 22 kilograms for the pair, or just over 48 pounds. These are two-way speakers, as you can see, and they utilize scan-speak drivers with a rather curvy waveguide that surrounds the tweeter. Around the back, you'll find a rear firing bass port. A little bit further down, you'll also see some of the largest binding posts I've ever seen in my life, a pair of binding posts that would not look out of place on the rear of the Bismarck. Inside, there's some nice cabling, specifically sourced from Vanden Hull. Now, for a pair of stand-mounted speakers, these designs are remarkably sensitive, running at 91.5 decibels. Unusual for stand-mounted speakers. The other interesting specification of note is that the Celestials are rated at 4, count them, 4 ohms. Now this is a nominal figure, and I emphasize nominal, so the actual rating should really vary over a typical music performance. Even so, I have said the dreaded words 4 ohm, and that will trigger some alarm bells in some heads. Some of you might be rather concerned that these speakers will be so hard to drive, your amplifiers may be at risk. Now, I'm not an expert in these matters, so of course I welcome more knowledgeable minds out there to offer their own advice. But from what I understand, because of the high sensitivity figure from these speakers, that will basically offset any potential power concerns. During the review, I certainly had no problem driving these speakers, and I did not experience any sort of strain around my amplifier in any way. During my review period, the Celestials performed without any problems at all, and didn't even need any gain adjustment when compared to the performance of a typical 8 ohm speaker. Even so, for, well, other reasons entirely, that 4 ohm rating will be a factor later in this review, so take note. Now, as you can see here, in terms of driver positioning, the treble units are offset, so you can, if you wish, position them on the inside or the outside of the listening position. Now, I preferred the treble units to be placed on the outside. When placed inside, I felt the treble, well, it kind of beamed a little, giving the sound a slight edge. Now, there's a variety of finishes available for these Celestial speakers, including a range of glossy finishes. You've got leather inserts if you really wish. You can use fabrics. There are precious woods. Basically, I would advise you, if you're looking to buy these speakers, to have a conversation with the company about your needs and requirements. And that's basically it in terms of the overview and the techie side of these speakers. How do these speakers actually sound? Well, let's go to the sound quality tests and we will find out. And welcome to the sound quality tests for the Celestial speakers. That's what I'm going to call them because it takes an hour and a half to say the full name. Now, I've recently been sound testing a digital transport via Silent Angel, and if you want to check that out, I'll put a link up above. So in my CD player was a copy of New Order's Republic, and I thought I'd give that another spin. Save a bit of time, I thought. So I decided to run with that one again. The CD itself, well, it offers a useful range of frequencies to challenge any set of high-end speakers. That was another reason I chose it, especially when combined with an open and spacious master, and that's what this CD does offer. Now, listening to the Celestial speakers via this track was, well, it was certainly an experience. Where to start? Well, first impression was one of sonic onslaught. The Celestials look big and the sound is big. The bass is large and bold and massy and rather imposing, which is no real surprise when you look at the size of the cabinet. Bass, well, bass dominated the music and took control. The cabinets hint that lower frequencies will hunt towards the bottom end of the bass frequency ladder, and that's certainly the case here. If you like your bass cavernous and enjoy a grumbling, brooding suite of lower frequencies, then the Celestials will certainly give you that. Those who like hard rock, metal and techno will certainly enjoy a window-shaking performance from the Celestials. Bass isn't particularly controlled though. In fact, bass moved around my listening room like a bull in a china shop. There was no focus or precision here, no organic response, little in the way of tonal realism and little appreciation of where it needed to sit in the mix. It careered round my soundstage, knocking precious ornaments off carefully positioned shelving, breaking chairs and spilling potted plants all over the floor. I spent half of the sound quality tests chasing these speakers around with a brush. Discipline wasn't really a highlight of the bass, despite its all-out, energetic and massy delivery. One specific example of the bass control, or lack of it, was the New Order band member, as was, Peter Hook and his bass guitar. Now, Hook was and is one of the most charismatic bass guitarists in music today, and his bass style is unique. On this track, his work offers a grunt with a rather growling edge. Via the celestial speakers, though, that growl was there. Yes, it was there, but rather too veiled to provide the sort of impact I was looking for. The best speakers give you growl, but they also work with the lower mids to provide a sort of bite that can take you back a little. It's a little bit surprising when you hear it. The celestial speakers gave you a measure of the growl, but the effect, that sort of bite, was a little bit masked. In treble terms, well, treble is certainly there. There are delicate acoustic guitar string plucks, and they registered, as did a set of sweeping delicate bells during the middle eight sequence of this track. But there was a loss of space around the soundstage, mainly because of this bold and rather intrusive bass response. So while the treble did its best, there was a certain loss of fragility and delicacy. Treble sounded a little forced, as if it was determined to do a job and stamp itself on the music, but I don't know, it kind of tried too hard. It never felt relaxed. Treble never really flowed. Mid-range, on the other hand, was very nice indeed. The central frequency was almost an oasis amongst the frequency chaos. Detail was plentiful. Vocals offered an impressive emotional delivery. Guitars were informative. Synthesizers provided a certain strength because they were bolstered by this bass power and percussion, offering a certain slam effect. I moved over to vinyl now, and the stripped minimal synth outfit from France called Deux, as in un, deux, 1, 2, and the track called Game and Performance. The response here from this simplified arrangement was better received than the more complex New Order track. Bass on this vinyl release was powerful and striking. Treble was a little unstable and just a little bit clinical, I thought, but the mid-range performance underpinned it, adding a sense of support and a measure of quality that did lift the overall song. So again, the mid-range tended to drag the song along by sheer force of will. The effect of all this conflict was a bit like watching a harried mother walking down the high street. Let's call her Mrs. Midrange, shall we? And let's pretend she's walking to the shops with two screaming kids behind her, one called Master Treble and the second Little Miss Bass, and both of those stomping down the road, screaming and acting a little bratty. That's the effect I got from this track. Mrs. Midrange managed to control the situation, but with effort. Finally, I thought I'd choose a track that throttled back on the bass a bit, just to see how the Celestials reacted, and so played the Peanut Vendor from the King's Singers. So this is mainly about harmony, a range of male harmony voices. Yes, there's an upright bass and there's some percussion, but there's not a great deal more. Now, let's pause a second, shall we? As I was about to play this track, it was at this point that I wanted to focus a little more on this 4 ohm specification, the one I mentioned earlier on. This is where things became interesting. So far, I've been listening to all of this music in a basic default 8 ohm amplifier configuration. Well, basically 8 ohm. Many amplifiers give you a sort of 4 ohm to 16 ohm suite, don't they? They basically say they adjust to a range of impedance figures. But generally, I think most people would refer to that as 8 ohm configuration. Now, saying that, I'm in a fortunate position with my Icon Audio monoblocks to have 2 sets of outputs. I have an 8 ohm output suite of sockets, but in addition to the 8 ohm outputs, I also have a suite of 4 ohm outputs, ideal to connect 4 ohm speakers, you might say. So I did, just to see what happened with the Celestials. And well, I've got to say, the change was dramatic and in a good way. Outputting sound from an amplifier with 4 ohm outputs changed the personality of the Celestials completely. Suddenly, the bass was far more polite and well-mannered. Treble had room to breathe, and mid-range didn't have to fall around in a semi-panic. Performances from all of the music sources I've cited in this review improved across the board. Now, okay, bass could have been slightly more focused and organic, while treble could have been a little more delicate and elegant, but still, the improvements were obvious. Now, the sound might not have been wholly transformed, but it certainly was enhanced and for the better. There was far more discipline across the soundstage in 4-ohm mode, and detail had a better chance of expressing itself. There was more air wandering across the soundstage, which meant that the performers sounded like they had more time, giving the music a much more relaxed attitude. Now, I've heard some suggestions that the 4-ohm output on my monoblocks provide a slightly more linear sound, so my amplifiers might be taming these speakers in some respect, but I would certainly advise you to test any possible 4-ohm speaker output that you might be able to access, just to see what results you get. The results might well be worth the effort. So, after that rather interesting set of results, how should I conclude this review of the Celestial speakers? Let's just finish off with this 4-ohm malarkey, shall we? Most amplifiers will perform in 8-ohm mode, or they will, as I said to you earlier on, make a best guess across a musical performance stretching from 4 to 16 ohms. And so you may be stuck with your own output mode, and hence these speakers for such a setup may sound a little chaotic and undisciplined. They still have their good points, that's true, but the frequency range is rather confusing for comfort. If you are able to switch your amplifier into 4-ohm mode in some way, then I would highly recommend that you give these speakers a demo. In 4-ohm mode, at least via my system, the Celestial Deep Breath Evo speakers, well, they changed their entire outlook. Even in 4-ohm mode, I wouldn't really call them neutral. There's a slight solid state effect to the sound, but it's a presentation I'm sure plenty of you will like. I'm sure there are plenty of you who love a solid state presentation. It's certainly a sound that offers an overall balance in this particular mode, and it offers plenty of focused slam and much more precision in the upper mids. So if you can output your sound at 4 ohms, I highly recommend a demo. You may be surprised. In short then, well, I would call the Celestial Deep Breath Evos specialist speakers for a specialist audience. And that's it, folks. Thank you very much for sticking with me to the end of this video, and thank you very much for all of your support. And if I could ask you before you go, if you could click the like, and if you haven't already done so, the subscribe buttons below, I'd be chuffed to bits. Check out below for chapter headings if you'd like to navigate around this video. There are other links to my Facebook group, which you're welcome to join. Also my website, which has a host of material you won't find on this channel. There's my Patreon page too. There's a link down there for that. And I would ask you to consider supporting me on Patreon just to keep this channel going, because this channel does depend on Patreon. Also, if you want an early look at these videos, well, I place these videos on Patreon on a Friday, and they will hit my YouTube channel around Sunday. So if you'd like an early look, Patreon supporters do have that early bird opportunity. Now, I will be back for Tuneful Tuesday on, strangely enough, a Tuesday. So I hope you can join me and keep me company, otherwise I'll miss you. So I'd like to have your company for that. Until that time, folks, bye-bye for now.